Get out! Security! Escort this man out. Now! Richard Vance, the senior loan manager, barked the order, his voice unnaturally loud, slicing to the strained quiet of the Apex Financial Group's flagship branch. The air, already thick with unspoken tension, crackled as if hit by lightning. Marcus Jones, the impeccably dressed black man, or rather, the man currently disguised as an average Joe, slowly, deliberately, reached a hand toward his face, a gesture that seemed both innocuous and loaded with unspoken meaning. Two uniformed security guards, hands hovering near their belts, took purposeful steps forward, their expressions a mixture of duty and uncertainty. "I've simply requested to speak with the branch manager about my loan application," Marcus explained, his voice a deliberate island of calm in the rising storm directed at Officer Miller, the younger of the two guards. "I haven't raised my voice, threatened anyone, or been confrontational in any capacity. I merely asked a question, and then requested escalation when that wasn't satisfactory. We don't give loans out to people trying to pull a fast one. People like you're causing a disturbance, disrupting business," Richard insisted, his face flushed, his own voice escalating, ironically becoming the only truly disruptive element in the polished lobby. He projected an air of righteous indignation, a performance Marcus recognized instantly from countless border negotiations. The bluster used to mask a weak position. Without waiting for further confirmation, spurred by Richard's aggressive certainty, the senior security guard made a move. But just as they reached Marcus, something pivotal occurred, a small action that unraveled everything Richard thought he controlled. Before Marcus was physically removed, a chain reaction began to expose a deep rot within the bank and deliver a swift, brutal lesson in humility and consequence. This story serves as a stark reminder of the instant karma that can unfold when arrogance and prejudice blind employees the reality right in front of them. Have you ever witnessed someone get caught red-handed in their own bias? Share your story in the comments below. We learn from each other's experiences. And let us know where you're watching from today. Hit that subscribe button now, because you won't want to miss the exact moment these bank employees realize they've just made the most catastrophic mistake of their professional lives. Marcus Jones hadn't just built a company. He'd forged an empire on the bedrock of a painful family legacy. Apex Financial Group, with its gleaming towers and network of over 250 branches across the nation, was more than a bank. It was a statement. It was the answer to the closed doors and condescending refusals his own working-class parents had faced in the racially charged landscape of the 1980s. He vividly remembered the 7 times they'd been denied loans to start a small neighborhood grocery, their dreams deferred not by financial viability, but by the color of their skin. Young Marcus, watching their quiet dignity erode with each rejection, had made a solemn vow. When he had the power, things would be profoundly different. Financial inclusion wouldn't be a buzzword. It would be the operational heartbeat of his institution. Now, decades later, as the founder and CEO of Apex Financial, his name wasn't just on buildings. It was synonymous with a certain kind of aspirational success. His face graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes, his rags to riches story, from the underserved Oak Creek neighborhood to the pinnacle of American finance, was a case study taught in MBA programs. He spoke at Davos about economic empowerment, championed diversity initiatives, and genuinely believed Apex was living up to its founding principles. But on this unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, miles away from the corporate headquarters, Marcus was intentionally anonymous. He was browsing the narrow aisles of a small convenience store back in Oak Creek, the neighborhood that had shaped him. No Taylor Brioni suit, no security detail flanking him, no gleaming executive sedan idling outside. Just a man in faded jeans, a simple crewneck sweater, and a baseball cap pulled low, picking up milk, bread, and a newspaper. He needed this grounding, this connection to his roots, especially when the view from the top felt increasingly rarefied. As he reached into the cooler for a carton of organic milk, his hand froze. Voices drifted from the adjacent aisle, laced with familiar, weary frustration that resonated deep in his bones. "Man, even Apex turned me down," a deep voice lamented, the words heavy with disappointment. "And they plastered community-focused banking all over their damn billboards. What a joke. Tell me about it." Another voice responded, equally disheartened. Everything right. Jumped through every hoop they set up. Credit spotless. Business plan is solid. Got collateral up the wazoo. Still the same old story. Marcus felt a prickle of unease. His bank, being discussed like this? Here? He subtly maneuvered his shopping cart closer, pretending to inspect a display of discounted cereals. Straining to hear more. Brought everything. The first man continued, his voice rising slightly. Tax returns going back 5 years. Detailed projections, market analysis, proof of contracts. The loan officer at the downtown Apex branch, Vance, I think his name was, barely even looked at it. Skimmed the first page, started typing on a computer, and 5 minutes later, sorry, you don't meet our current lending criteria. Then, I kid you not, I watched this white dude walking right after me. Same kind of business. Probably asking for more. And Vance is all smiles, taking him into his office like he's royalty. Heard him laughing through the glass partition. Same thing happened to my cousin Maya at the Midtown branch. The second man added, the bitterness palpable. It's like they got an unspoken quota. Okay, we approved one black-owned business this quarter. Check the diversity box. Now back to business as usual. It's the same old Prejudice, man, just dressed up in fancier suits and hiding behind glossy mission statements. A cold dread began to seep into Marcus's chest. He peered cautiously around the end cap of the aisle. 2 black men, probably in their late 30s, stood talking near the coffee station. Both were sharply dressed, projecting an image of entrepreneurial drive. Yet their faces held the unmistakable weariness of men who'd encountered the same invisible barrier time and again. And you know what really burns me, the taller man said, gesturing emphatically with a bag of coffee beans. Apex was supposed to be different. Their whole origin story is about serving the underserved, right? That founder, Marcus Jones, you see him giving speeches all the time, talking about financial justice and leveling the playing field. All talk, brother, his friend replied, shaking his head slowly. Just marketing spin to make the establishment feel comfortable banking with a black-owned institution. Same discrimination, just a shinier building, and a CEO who looks like us telling us everything's fine. Marcus quietly retreated, abandoning his shopping cart near the checkout. His appetite had vanished, replaced by a churning mix of anger, disbelief, and profound disappointment. Was this truly happening? In his bank? Under his leadership? The very institution conceived as an antidote to this poison? Images flashed through his mind. 20 years earlier, standing in the cavernous, dusty shell of the building that would become Apex Financial's first branch. He was younger then, brimming with fierce idealism, pointing at architectural blueprints while passionately addressing a small group of initial investors, many of whom had faced their own struggles with biased lenders. This bank, he had declared, his voice echoing in the empty space, full of conviction, will be a sanctuary of opportunity. We will serve everyone with dignity and respect, judging applications solely on merit, not melanin. My parents were denied their dream not because their numbers didn't add up, not because their plan wasn't sound, but because of the color of their skin. That injustice stops here. Not in our bank. Never in our bank. The investors, a diverse group united by shared experiences or belief in his vision, had nodded, captivated. An elderly woman had shared her own story, tears welling in her eyes, of being turned away from mortgage decades earlier despite impeccable finances. Together, fueled by righteous purpose, they had laid the foundation for what will become one of the nation's most successful and rapidly growing financial institutions. Banking for all wasn't just a clever slogan. It was supposed to be Apex's fundamental DNA, woven into every policy, every interaction, every decision. Back in the sterile luxury of his executive office later that evening, the city lights twinkling below like scattered diamonds, Marcus stared intently at the elegantly framed mission statement hanging on the wall. Apex Financial Group, building wealth opportunity for all communities. The words, once a source of immense pride, now fell hollow, almost mocking. Spread across his vast mahogany desk were stacks of reports and statistical analyses, loan approval rates broken down by demographics, which he now realized he'd never personally audited beyond the summaries, customer satisfaction surveys that suddenly felt suspect, diversity initiative updates that perhaps only painted a surface-level picture of progress. Had he become complacent? Too insulated by success? Too trusting of the systems he'd put in place? Sir, is everything all right? Evelyn Reed, his sharp, fiercely loyal executive vice president and right hand for nearly 2 decades, asked from the doorway, her brow furrowed with concern. His unusual silence and stillness were uncharacteristic for the typically dynamic CEO. Marcus turned slowly from the window, his expression grim. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low but firm, "cancel my entire schedule for tomorrow." "All of it, sir?" she asked, surprised. "Even the round table with the Federal Reserve governors?" That was a meeting Marcus had been preparing for meticulously for weeks. "Everything," he repeated, his gaze distant. "I need to see something for myself. From the ground level." He whispered the last part more to himself than to her, a plan already forming, born of a painful necessity. He needed to know the truth, unfiltered, unvarnished, even if it shattered the image he held of the institution he'd poured his life into building. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, mirroring Marcus's somber mood. He wasn't in his penthouse apartment overlooking the park, but in a nondescript short-term rental across town. Sitting in front of a brightly lit mirror, he surrendered his familiar features to the skilled hands of a professional makeup artist, a woman renowned in theatrical circles for her transformative abilities. This wasn't about vanity. It was about erasure. Step by meticulous step, the Marcus Jones the world knew began to disappear. Thick-rimmed, slightly unfashionable glasses replaced his usual understated designer frames. Subtle prosthetics, expertly applied, altered the line of his jaw and the prominence of his cheekbones just enough to make his face unfamiliar. The artist stippled on faint blemishes and imperfections, disrupting the smooth complexion typically maintained by expensive skincare routines. A dusting of temporary gray was added at his temples, suggesting a different kind of life stress. Finally, a realistic-looking but unremarkable salt and pepper goatee, something Marcus had never worn, was carefully applied, completing the facial metamorphosis. Next came the wardrobe, sourced from a mid-range apartment store the previous evening by Evelyn's most discreet assistant. Gone with a bespoke suit, the silk tie, the handmade Italian loafers. In their place, slightly ill-fitting khaki trousers, a generic blue button-down shirt that pulled awkwardly across the shoulders, scuffed brown lace-up shoes, and a worn, nondescript windbreaker. The transformation was more than cosmetic. It was about shedding the aura of power and privilege. The final, crucial element was behavioral. Marcus practiced in the full-length mirror, consciously rounding his shoulders, adopting a more hesitant stance, avoiding the direct, confident gaze that was his default. He practiced making himself smaller, less assertive, the subtle physical language often adopted by those accustomed to being overlooked or dismissed. "Remember," the makeup artist instructed, applying a final touch of powder, "less direct eye contact. People who feel powerless, who aren't used to being the focus, they tend to look away more often. Don't stride, walk. Don't command space, occupy it hesitantly." For hours after the process began, the man who emerged onto the city's sidewalk bore only a passing resemblance to the powerful CEO whose portrait adorned the lobbies of Apex financial branches nationwide. He was now Michael Andrews, an ordinary citizen armed with meticulously fabricated, yet financially identical loan application. The name was different, the face altered, the clothes unremarkable, but the core financial data, income level, assets, excellent credit score, a legitimate 815, solid business history and projections for his fictional entity, Pinnacle Strategic Solutions, mirror Marcus Jones's own qualifications precisely. He clutched a worn briefcase containing the application, his heart pounding not with the fear of being discovered, but with a dread of what he might confirm about his own creation. He hailed a standard yellow cab, directing the driver toward the gleaming Apex financial flagship branch downtown, ready to experience his bank from the other side of the mahogany desk. The Apex financial flagship branch wasn't just a building. It was a monument to Marcus Jones's success, a cathedral of commerce dominating a prime corner of the financial district. Gleaming glass soared stories high, reflecting the morning sun. Polished granite and imported marble adorned the expansive lobby. A massive, illuminated Apex logo served as a constant reminder of the brand's prominence. Marcus, now Michael Andrews, adjusted the collar of his ill-fitting shirt. took a deep breath, and pushed through the imposing revolving doors. The disguise felt itchy and foreign, a costume chafing against the skin. But the documentation nestled in his briefcase was irrefutable, designed to be a slam dunk for approval by any objective measure. He paused just inside, taking in the scene. The familiar hum of banking activity, the faint scent of lemon polish and money, the hushed tones of important transactions. Until today, he'd only ever entered this space as its master, greeted with deference, whisked away to executive floors. He'd relied on reports, on summaries, on the filtered perspectives of his management team. The overheard conversation in the Oak Creek convenience store had irrevocably cracked that reliance, planting seeds of doubt that had now blossomed into a painful imperative to witness the ground truth. His attention was immediately drawn to a scene unfolding near the main reception desk. A well-dressed white man, likely in his late 40s or early 50s, exuded an air of casual entitlement. Samantha, a senior customer service representative Marcus recognized instantly, she'd received a 10-year service award from him personally just last year, was greeting the man with effusive warmth. "Mr. Harrison, how wonderful to see you again," Samantha exclaimed, her smile broad and genuine as she extended a welcoming hand. "How was Amelia's graduation trip? Italy, wasn't it? She must have had a marvelous time. You must be bursting with pride. Yale Law, is it?" Mr. Harrison beamed, standing a little taller under the warmth of her recognition. "Indeed, following the old man's footsteps, though she claims she'll actually practice public interest law." He chuckled. "And yes, Italy was spectacular. Thank you for remembering Samantha." "Oh, that's just wonderful," Samantha replied, her voice radiating personalized interest. "And how is Martha recovering from her knee surgery? Back on the tennis court yet?" "Good as new, practically," Mr. Harrison nodded, clearly appreciating the personal touch. "Thanks so much for asking after her." Samantha placed a light, familiar hand on his elbow, a gesture of seamless, ingrained VIP service. "Richard is expecting you, of course. He's already pulled up your portfolio information and is eager to discuss those alternative investment strategies we touched on last time. He's blocked out the entire hour just for you." "Fantastic," Mr. Harrison replied smoothly. "I've been looking forward to strategizing." Marcus observed this exchange with the keen eye of an executive who had personally signed off on the customer service training manuals. The recognition, the personalized engagement, the seamless transition, the prioritization. This was the apex standard he had envisioned. This was the level of service promised to every customer in their marketing materials. As Mr. Harrison was smoothly guided across the opulent lobby toward the loan officer's area, Marcus approached the less crowded side of the reception desk. Another staff member, Sarah, whose nameplate identified her as a customer service associate, was focused intently on her computer screen, typing rapidly. Marcus stood patiently, waiting to be acknowledged. Nearly 30 seconds ticked by, an eternity in a customer service context, before she finally glanced up, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting, disinterested moment before returning to her monitor. "Help you?" she asked, her tone flat, devoid of any warmth or welcome. No smile. No good morning. No welcome to Apex. "Yes, good morning," Marcus replied, pitching his voice slightly higher, adopting the persona of Michael Andrews. "I have a 10:30 appointment to discuss a business loan." "The name is Andrews, Michael Andrews." Sarah's eyes flickered back to her screen. She scrolled briefly, clicked her mouse a few times. Then, without looking up at him again, she reached under the counter and retrieved a thick clipboard stacked high with forms. "Fill this out. All of it. Bring it back here when you're done," she instructed, sliding the clipboard across the polished counter. "Someone will be with you when they become available. No greeting by name. No offer of assistance. No indication of when available might be. No escort to a waiting area or explanation of the process. And crucially, no sustained eye contact." "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, glancing at the large, Apex-branded clock on the wall. It was now 10:32 a.m. "I believe my appointment was scheduled for 10:30 with Mr. Vance." "We're running a little behind today," Sarah replied curtly, her gaze still fixed on her screen. Her fingers resumed their rapid typing. "Just fill out the paperwork and take a seat over there. We'll call you." Marcus took the clipboard and found a seat in the designated waiting area, a cluster of slightly worn chairs facing the loan officer's glass-walled offices. He began filling out the forms, entering information he knew intimately, just under a different identity. From this vantage point, he had an unobstructed view of the lobby's dynamics. Across from him sat a young black couple, impeccably dressed, clutching a similar sheaf of completed paperwork. They looked anxious but hopeful. Marcus offered polite nod. They returned tired smiles. The man subtly checked his watch, a gesture suggesting they'd already been waiting for a significant amount of time. Marcus made a mental note. The Williams family. The minutes crawled by. 10, 15, 20. During this time, Marcus observed a pattern so blatant, so stark, it felt like a physical blow. Customer 1, a white man in his 60s, entered, was greeted immediately by Sarah with a warm, "Good morning, sir. How can Apex assist you today?" He mentioned needing to speak with a loan officer about consolidating debt. Within 3 minutes, he was being escorted by Samantha to an available officer. Customer 2, a white woman in her 30s, approached the desk, explaining she didn't have an appointment but was interested in mortgage refinancing options. "Of course, we can always make time to discuss refinancing," Sarah assured her brightly, pairing her almost instantly with Brenda Foster, another loan officer Marcus recognized. Customer 3, another white man, younger, in business casual attire, came in and was greeted by name by Samantha, who happened to be passing. He was ushered toward Richard Vance's office area moments later, apparently for a prearranged consultation. All three arrived after Marcus, Michael Andrews, and the Williams family. All three were white. All three received prompt, personalized attention, and were seen by loan officers within minutes. Meanwhile, Marcus sat. The Williams family sat. Their completed paperwork rested expectantly on their laps. The large wall clock ticked with agonizing slowness. Through the glass partition separating the waiting area from the loan officer section, Marcus could see Richard Vance, the same senior loan manager who had received a prestigious performance award at the last company gala, an award Marcus himself had presented, laughing and gesturing enthusiastically with Mr. Harrison. They were leaning conspiratorially over Vance's computer screen. Vance slapped his desk lightly in apparent excitement. "That's exactly the kind of growth trajectory we love to see, Bob." Vance's voice carried faintly across the lobby. "With your track record and this proposal, approval should be smooth sailing." The body language screamed rapport, partnership, enthusiasm, opportunity being freely offered. 25 minutes had now elapsed since Marcus's arrival. 22 minutes past his scheduled appointment. The Williams family had clearly been waiting even longer. Marcus watched as Brenda Foster finished with her refinancing client and became available. She walked over to the reception desk, conferred briefly in hushed tones with Sarah, and glanced fleetingly toward the waiting area where Marcus and the Williamses sat. Instead of calling either of them, however, Brenda disappeared through a door marked staff break room. 5 more agonizing minutes passed. Marcus could now see 3 loan officers. Richard Vance, his meeting with Mr. Harrison apparently concluded, Brenda Foster, and another officer he didn't immediately recognize, chatting casually near the coffee machine inside the break room, visible through the glass partition. None seemed remotely concerned about the waiting customers. Have you ever felt deliberately ignored or sidelined in a professional setting? What signals told you that you weren't being prioritized? Hit that subscribe button now to witness the electrifying moment this undercover CEO confronts a bias head-on and the shockwaves it sends through the entire organization. Finally, after a total wait of 28 minutes, despite a confirmed appointment and multiple officers being demonstrably available, Sarah's voice cut through the air, though still lacking warmth. "Andrews? Michael Andrews? Richard Vance can see you now." The Williams family exchanged a look of profound frustration and resignation. They had arrived before Marcus and were still waiting. As Marcus stood, gathering his briefcase, he made eye contact with Mr. Williams and gave a slight, empathetic nod. He silently committed their faces and names to memory. Another critical data point. As Marcus approached Richard Vance's glass-walled office, He observed the loan manager's demeanor undergo an instantaneous, chilling transformation. The easy smile and enthusiastic body language displayed moments earlier when Mr. Harrison vanished, replaced by a guarded, almost weary expression. The chair that had been pulled out invitingly for the previous client remained tucked tightly against the desk. Vance didn't rise to greet him. He merely gestured vaguely toward the visitor's chair while finishing typing an email, pointedly avoiding eye contact. "Have a seat," Vance said flatly, his tone bordering on dismissive. "It's Andrews, right?" "Yes, Michael Andrews," Marcus replied calmly, extending his hand across the desk. There was a fractional pause, just long enough to be noticeable, a micro-hesitation signaling reluctance, before Vance took it in a brief, limp handshake. He immediately reached for the clipboard Sarah had presumably placed on his desk. No pleasantries. No welcome to Apex. No, how are you today? The contrast of the reception afforded Mr. Harrison wasn't just noticeable, it was a chasm. As Vance began scanning the application form, not the detailed portfolio Marcus held, but the basic intake sheet, his eyebrows arched slightly, perhaps registering the requested loan amount or the stated income, figures that, under the name Marcus Jones, would have triggered immediate VIP protocols. Applying for a business expansion loan, $150,000, Vance asked, the skepticism practically dripping from his voice. The amount was substantial, but well within the documented capacity of the applicant's financials. "That's correct," Marcus replied evenly, maintaining the Michael Andrews persona. He opened his pristine, meticulously organized business portfolio. Pinnacle Strategic Solutions has been operating profitably for 8 years. We specialize in optimizing logistics for mid-sized distribution companies. This loan is earmarked to fund our expansion into the southwestern market, specifically Arizona and Nevada, where we've already secured letters of intent from 3 significant clients. He slid the portfolio across the desk. It contained immaculate financial statements, a comprehensive business plan. Ironically, one reviewed and praised internally by Apex's top strategist in a blind submission exercise Marcus had initiated months ago. Detailed market analysis, copies of the letters of intent, and proof of substantial collateral. By any objective banking standard, it was an application destined for swift approval. Vance gave the portfolio, the result of hours of careful preparation, a cursory, almost contemptuous flip-through. His eyes darted across pages without absorbing the data, never pausing on the impressive year-over-year growth, the healthy profit margins, or the detailed breakdown of the proposed use of funds. He set the portfolio aside far too quickly. "Logistics consulting, huh?" Vance muttered, turning back to his computer screen. "Competitive field. And where exactly did you say you acquired your business acumen, Mr. Andrews?" The question, phrased just so, hung in the air, less a genuine inquiry, more a subtle challenge to his credibility. Marcus had clearly listed his credentials on the very first page of the portfolio summary, as noted in the executive summary in my attached resume. Marcus replied calmly, meeting Vance's gaze steadily. "I hold an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business and have 15 years of direct industry experience, including senior management roles at 2 major logistics corporations before founding Pinnacle." Vance's eyebrow twitched again, a flicker of surprise or perhaps disbelief. "Stanford, really? Interesting." The unspoken addendum, "For someone like you," was deafeningly silent but unmistakably present. "Yes, graduated with honors," Marcus added evenly, watching Vance's micro-expressions, cataloging the subtle tells of bias. At this point, Brenda Foster, who had apparently finished her coffee break and entered Vance's office, settling into a chair slightly behind Marcus's line of sight, leaned forward smoothly. "Mr. Andrews, while Richard reviews the specifics of your financial history, perhaps I could briefly introduce you to some of Apex's other specialized financing programs," she interjected, her voice overly bright, saccharine. "We have several options through our Community Pathways initiative that might be, well, a more suitable fit for businesses at your current stage. I'd be interested to understand what makes them more suitable than the standard business expansion loan I've applied for, given my documented qualifications." Marcus countered politely but firmly, refusing the offered detour. Brenda produced a glossy, trifold brochure from a folder. Marcus recognized it instantly, the Community Pathways Loan Program. It was an initiative he had championed, intended genuinely to provide access to capital for entrepreneurs facing systemic barriers, often with slightly more flexible initial requirements, but also carrying significantly higher interest rates, nearly 4% higher than prime business loans, along with shorter repayment terms and more restrictive covenants. It was designed as a bridge, not a default pathway for qualified minority applicants. Seeing it wielded this way felt like a betrayal of his original intent. Well, this program is specifically designed to support entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, Brenda explained, emphasizing the word diverse in a way that stripped it of its positive connotations and turned it into coded language for a higher risk. The qualification thresholds are assessed differently, offering more flexibility for those perhaps still building a strong financial track record. The irony was a physical ache in Marcus's chest. He knew, with absolute certainty, that his application far exceeded the standard requirements. This wasn't about flexibility. It was about steering him, based on appearance, toward a more expensive, less favorable product, a practice explicitly forbidden in Apex policy and training. Thank you, Ms. Foster, but I believe my qualifications, as documented, comfortably meet or exceed the criteria for the standard business expansion loan. Marcus stated clearly, why would I opt for a product with significantly higher costs and stricter terms? Richard Vance cleared his throat, reclaiming control, his tone shifting to one of paternalistic condescension. Mr. Andrews, look, banking is a complex world. Sometimes, individuals from certain backgrounds may not fully grasp the intricacies of financial obligations the way more established business owners do. It's just a reality we see. These specialized products offer guardrails, a structure to help you build creditworthiness and demonstrate repayment capability. The statement landed like a lead weight, naked bias, thinly veiled as helpful advice. Certain backgrounds. Marcus felt a surge of hot anger rise in his throat, but he clamped down hard, channeling it into his response, keeping his voice steady, almost clinical. My personal credit score is 815, Mr. Vance, Marcus replied evenly. Pinnacle Strategic Solutions has maintained profitability every single quarter for 8 consecutive years. I have never, personally or corporately, missed a single payment on any financial obligation. Could you please specify what elements of my background, as documented in this application, lead you to believe I lack understanding of financial responsibility or require guardrails? Vance shifted uncomfortably in his expensive ergonomic chair. The direct challenge had clearly flustered him. I was speaking generally, of course, he stammered slightly. Broad market observations. But realistic expectations are key. A loan of this magnitude, $150, 000, well, it represents a substantial risk for the bank. He abruptly changed the subject, his eyes flicking over Marcus's inexpensive attire. Say, that's a decent watch you're wearing. Where do you pick that up? The implication was subtle but insidious, questioning how someone presenting as Michael Andrews could afford even a modest accessory, hinting at financial irresponsibility or misrepresentation. It was a gift, Marcus replied curtly, refusing to be drawn into the irrelevant diversion. As my financial statements clearly demonstrate, I prioritize reinvesting profits back into the business rather than drawing a large salary. My personal expenditures are modest. The business, however, is robust. He tapped the portfolio. The numbers speak for themselves. Vance leaned back, steepling his fingers in a classic power pose Marcus recognized from countless negotiation tactics aimed at intimidation. Let's put the cards on the table, Mr. Andrews, Vance said, his voice lowering slightly, adopting a confidential man-to-man tone that was somehow more offensive than his earlier condescension. Statistically speaking, and this is just business reality, nothing personal, someone with your profile applying for this level of unsecured capital, you represent a higher flight risk. The bank has a fiduciary duty to protect its assets, you understand. The office fell utterly silent. The phrase hung in the air, thick and toxic. Someone with your profile. The euphemism was so transparent it was insulting. Marcus felt the careful facade of Michael Andrews momentarily crack. Genuine, visceral anger surged through him, hot and sharp. He took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing the calm back into his voice, letting only a dangerous edge remain. "I'm finding that term rather vague, Mr. Vance," Marcus said, his voice dangerously soft, yet carrying immense weight. "Could you perhaps elaborate? What exactly do you mean by someone with my profile?" The question was a direct strike, unavoidable. Vance was cornered, forced either to articulate his prejudice openly or attempt a clumsy retreat. His eyes darted nervously toward Brenda Foster, seeking backup, but she suddenly found the contents of her notepad utterly fascinating, her pen poised but still. I'm referring to standard risk assessment parameters," Vance fumbled, his face beginning to flush. "Credit demographics, statistical analysis, industry benchmarks." The jargon sounded hollow, unconvincing even to his own ears. "I see," Marcus said, his voice still deceptively calm. "So, let's clarify which demographic factors or statistical benchmarks are currently outweighing the objective data in my application. Is it my documented 815 credit score? My 8 consecutive years of documented business profitability? The secured contracts detailed in the expansion plan? The significant collateral offered? Or is there perhaps another factor, an unspoken demographic, that's unduly influencing your assessment of my profile and perceived flight risk?" Vance's discomfort was now palpable. He shuffled papers pointlessly, took a long sip of water, buying time. "Mr. Andrews, you're deliberately misunderstanding me," he insisted, trying to regain control. "We have stringent protocols, a responsibility to our depositors. We evaluate all applications based on the same objective criteria. Your application will receive the exact same consideration as any other." The lie was so audacious, so flagrantly contradicted by Marcus's own observations just minutes earlier, Vance practically pre-approving Mr. Harrison with far less scrutiny, that it was almost darkly comical. "So, just to be absolutely crystal clear, Mr. Vance," Marcus pressed, leaning forward slightly, his gaze unwavering, "are you stating unequivocally that the fact that I am a black man has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on your skepticism, your steering attempts, your risk assessment, or the overall tone of this meeting?" The question landed with the force of a physical blow in the carefully constructed artifice of the loan office. Vance's face went from flushed red to a blotchy white. His mouth opened and closed, but for a moment, no sound emerged. "We don't," he stammered, indignation warring with panic. "Race is absolutely not a factor in any lending decision at Apex Financial. That would be illegal. It's against explicit company policy. We pride ourselves on diversity and inclusion." Marcus leaned back slowly, holding Vance's gaze for a long moment. "I am genuinely relieved to hear you say that, Mr. Vance," he said, a touch of ice entering his tone. "In that case, let's dispense with the vague generalizations and return to the specific financial merits of my application, shall we? Page 12 outlines the projected ROI based on the secured contracts." Vance didn't realize it, couldn't possibly comprehend it, but Marcus wasn't just cornering him. He was offering a final, slender lifeline, a chance to pivot, to apologize implicitly by changing his behavior, to salvage the situation by simply doing his job correctly and treating this applicant, Michael Andrews, with the professional respect any qualified individual deserved. It was a chance Vance was about to spectacularly fumble. The atmosphere inside Richard Vance's office had curdled. The thin veneer of professional courtesy had dissolved, replaced by a palpable antagonism emanating primarily from the loan manager. Marcus's direct challenge regarding racial bias had clearly struck a nerve, and Vance, instead of retreating or correcting course, seemed determined to double down, albeit through a different line of attack. "All right, Mr. Andrews, let's drill down into this business plan then," Vance said stiffly, pulling the portfolio Marcus had provided closer, though his body language remained closed-off defensive. He flipped back to the section describing Pinnacle Strategic Solutions. "You mentioned logistics optimization for mid-size distributors. That's a crowded space, highly competitive. What exactly is your unique value proposition? What makes you think Pinnacle can carve out market share against the established players?" It was, on the surface, a legitimate business question, the first truly substantive one Vance had asked. But the tone wasn't one of genuine curiosity. It dripped with skepticism, clearly searching for weaknesses, for reasons to justify the denial he seemed predetermined to issue. Marcus, however, was more than prepared. Our niche is specifically targeting mid-market companies, those typically too small for the major consulting conglomerates like McKinsey or BCG, but too complex for smaller, localized advisors. Marcus explained calmly and clearly. Turn to page 17 in the meticulously organized portfolio. He pointed to specific charts and data points. We offer a proprietary analytics platform, developed in-house over 3 years, that provides supply chain visibility and predictive modeling capabilities previously only accessible to Fortune 500 companies. Our pricing structure is tiered based on client size, making enterprise-level optimization affordable for the mid-market segment. Furthermore, as detailed on page 19, our team possesses deep operational expertise, drawn directly from senior roles within the very industries we serve. We speak their language, understand their pain points intimately. Marcus's command of the material was absolute, his explanations precise and compelling. He effortlessly deployed industry jargon and technical details related to warehouse management systems, transportation algorithms, and inventory forecasting, knowledge that reflected a level of expertise far exceeding what Vance likely expected from Michael Andrews. This wasn't just a business plan. It was a masterclass delivered by someone who lived and breathed this world. Because, of course, Marcus Jones, the actual CEO, regularly reviewed and dissected hundreds of such plans from major corporations seeking apex financing or partnership. Vance's expression tightened perceptibly. He hadn't anticipated this depth of knowledge or the robustness of the business model. His eyes darted between the figures on the pages Marcus indicated, searching for inconsistencies or flaws, and finding none readily apparent. The documented history supported the projections. The client testimonials were glowing. The market analysis was sound. These projected revenue increases, they seemed rather aggressive. Vance countered weakly, latching onto one of the few subjective areas of critique, despite the clear evidence of existing contracts underpinning those projections. Through the glass walls of Vance's office, Marcus noticed another scene unfolding in the lobby. A middle-aged white couple was being warmly welcomed by a different loan officer. Smiles were exchanged, coffee was offered, chairs were pulled out invitingly. The loan officer leaned forward, listening intently, nodding enthusiastically as the couple spoke. The disparity in treatment, happening concurrently just yards away, was stark, almost surreal. Vance noticed Marcus's gaze drift and followed it, observing the interaction outside. A flicker of something, annoyance, resentment, crossed Vance's face before his expression hardened further. He seemed to make a decision. "Look, Mr. Andrews," Vance said, abruptly shifting tactics again, abandoning the pretense of scrutinizing the business plan. "Perhaps the scale of your request is the primary sticking point. If you were willing to adjust your application, maybe start with a smaller amount, say $25,000, we could potentially expedite the review process for a more realistic initial loan. I appreciate the suggestion, Mr. Vance, but I am not a startup seeking seed money," Marcus corrected him firmly, maintaining his composure despite the mounting frustration. "As my documentation clearly shows, including credit reports and references from previous lenders, Pinnacle Strategic Solutions has successfully managed and repaid business credit lines significantly larger than this request, with an impeccable history. The $150,000 I'm requesting is not arbitrary. It's directly tied to the operational cost of launching in 2 new states simultaneously, as detailed in the budget breakdown. Anything less would hamstring the expansion and jeopardize the very contracts that guarantee repayment." Vance's irritation became increasingly visible. His carefully constructed narrative of an unqualified, perhaps fraudulent, applicant was crumbling against the weight of facts and the applicant's unwavering, knowledgeable demeanor. This Michael Andrews wasn't behaving as expected. He wasn't deferential, wasn't easily intimidated, wasn't displaying a lack of financial sophistication Vance seemed determined to find. Just then, Brenda Foster, who had remained largely silent but observant, leaned over and whispered something in Vance's ear. Though she shielded her mouth, Marcus, whose hearing was honed by years of deciphering murmurs across expansive boardrooms, caught the critical fragments. Backed up? Need to wrap this? Harrison needs help closing the Wilson Jumbo mortgage. Vance nodded almost imperceptibly, then glanced at his watch with display of exaggerated impatience. Mr. Andrews, I appreciate you bringing this in, he said, his tone signaling dismissal. But I believe we've covered the necessary ground for now. I'll need to submit this application for review by the underwriting committee. That process typically takes anywhere from 7 to 10 business days, sometimes longer depending on volume. We'll be in touch. That's interesting, Marcus replied, his voice dangerously smooth. Because I distinctly overheard you telling Mr. Harrison earlier that his approval was practically guaranteed and would be expedited, likely within 48 hours. Is there a different, perhaps faster, review process reserved for certain long-standing clients? The pointed observation, highlighting the blatant double standard, landed like a physical slap. Vance's face flushed a deeper shade of red. Every situation is unique, he snapped defensively. Mr. Harrison has a multi-decade relationship with Apex Financial, multiple accounts, significant assets under management. I see. Marcus nodded slowly, deliberately. And how, precisely, does a new, highly qualified business applicant establish such a favorable relationship if their initial applications are met with skepticism, delays, and attempts to steer them toward inferior products, while others receive preferential treatment from day one? Vance's carefully maintained professional facade finally shattered. He shuffled the papers on his desk with unnecessary force, a clear displacement activity. His patience, already worn thin, evaporated completely. Leaning slightly toward Brenda, but not lowering his voice enough, he muttered under his breath, yet clearly audible to Marcus, God, we're wasting so much time on this lowlife. Looks like he crawled out from under a rock. Probably a fraud anyway. Meanwhile, real clients are waiting. The slur, raw and ugly, hung in the air for a pregnant moment. A wave of pure, cold fury washed over Marcus, fiercer than anything he'd felt yet. It took every ounce of his formidable self-control not to react physically. He allowed a flicker of the shock and anger to register on his face, ensuring Vance knew he'd been heard, then solidified his resolve. I would like to speak with your branch manager immediately, please, Marcus said, his voice devoid of heat but resonating with an unmistakable firmness. Vance's eyes widened slightly, startled at being so clearly overheard. His initial embarrassment morphed instantly into aggressive defensiveness. He pushed back from his desk, rising to his feet. The branch manager doesn't have time to deal with every applicant who gets upset because they don't qualify for Moon, he retorted coldly, his voice rising again. I've explained the process. This meeting is concluded. If you're not satisfied with Apex's procedures, perhaps another financial institution would be a better fit for your needs. The dismissal was now absolute, contemptuous. Marcus remained seated, his posture calm but unyielding. His briefcase rested on his lap. Requesting to speak with manager regarding concerns about service and potential bias is a standard customer right, Mr. Vance. It's outlined in Apex's own Customer Bill of Rights. There is nothing upsetting or unreasonable about my request. I will wait here until the manager is available. Vance's face contorted with anger, his composure, already fractured, completely disintegrated. Mr. Andrews, I've been more than patient. You are now refusing to leave after your appointment has ended. You are trespassing. He turned toward the glass door of his office. Security, he bellowed, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. Security to Mr. Vance's office now. Within moments, Officer Miller, the younger security guard Marcus had noticed earlier, appeared at the office door, hand instinctively going to the radio on his belt. He looked from the visibly agitated, standing loan manager to the calm, seated applicant, confusion clouding his features. Is there a problem, Mr. Vance? Miller asked, his eyes assessing the situation. Yes, there's a problem, Vance declared, gesturing angrily at Marcus. This individual, Mr. Andrews, is being disruptive and confrontational. His loan application review is complete, and he is refusing to vacate the premises. Please escort him out of the building immediately. Vance's description starkly contrasted with the reality Officer Miller was witnessing. Marcus sitting calmly, hands folded, while Vance himself was red-faced and shouting. Officer Miller hesitated, clearly sensing the discrepancy. He turned respectfully to Marcus. "Sir," he began, his tone polite but firm, "I'll have to ask you to come with me." "Officer, I assure you, I have done nothing disruptive," Marcus explained calmly, meeting the guard's gaze directly. "I simply informed Mr. Vance that I wish to exercise my right to speak with the branch manager regarding my loan application and the unprofessional, potentially discriminatory conduct I experienced during this meeting. Mr. Vance refused that request and is now demanding my removal. He's causing a scene. He's been argumentative from the start." Vance insisted, his voice laced with panic now, perhaps realizing he might have overplayed his hand, but unable to back down. "Just get him out of here." Officer Miller still looked uncertain, caught between the aggressive demands of a bank manager and the calm demeanor of the man being accused. Years of training to follow the chain of command warred with his own apparent discomfort. Reluctantly, he made his decision. "Sir, I need you to come with me now," he repeated to Marcus, his hand gesturing towards the door. "Please don't make this any more difficult." Marcus rose slowly, deliberately gathering his briefcase and the portfolio Vance had barely glanced at. He moved with unhurried dignity. "I understand you have a job to do, Officer Miller," Marcus said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear clearly. "I will accompany you without resistance. But let the record show, I am being forcibly removed from Apex Financial Group for the sole offense of requesting to speak with manager after being subjected to discriminatory treatment and unprofessional conduct by Mr. Richard Vance." "Don't listen to his lies," Vance sputtered, following him out of the office into the now attentive lobby. "He's just disgruntled because his shady application didn't pass muster. We see this kind of thing all the time." Heads were turning throughout the bank. Customers paused mid-transaction. Tellers exchanged wide-eyed glances. The young black couple, the Williams family, still waiting, watched the unfolding drama with expressions of weary recognition and perhaps a touch of grim validation. As Officer Miller began escorting Marcus toward the main entrance, they passed a loan officer who was still cheerfully assisting the white couple. Her enthusiastic voice carried clearly. "And frankly, with your excellent credit and equity position, we could easily approve up to $300,000 if you want to consider adding that sunroom extension as well. The interest rates are phenomenal right now." The juxtaposition was almost too perfectly, painfully ironic, as if orchestrated by a playwright to underscore the injustice Marcus had just experienced. Same bank, same day, same loan products. Yet, worlds apart in treatment, access, and opportunity. What Richard Vance, Brenda Foster, and nearly everyone else in that branch couldn't possibly fathom was that their professional lives at Apex Financial were now measured in mere minutes. The man being ignominiously escorted toward the exit wasn't just any customer. He was the architect of the entire empire, and he now possessed irrefutable, recorded proof of the betrayal of its core principles. The stage was set for a reckoning of epic proportions. The walk across the expansive marble floor of the Apex Financial lobby felt like traversing miles under a harsh spotlight. Marcus Jones, disguised as a dismissed Michael Andrews, was being paraded out of his own bank, a security guard at his elbow, past the curious and averted gazes of customers and employees. For some onlookers, it might have been an uncomfortable but ultimately forgettable moment. For Marcus, it was a devastating confirmation of a cancer growing within the institution he loved, a public manifestation of the private betrayal he'd felt since overhearing that conversation in Oak Creek. Officer Miller maintained professional but slightly awkward distance as they moved toward the towering glass entrance doors. The young guard was visibly ill at ease with the situation. As they neared the exit, away from the immediate earshot of Richard Vance, who was watching triumphantly from near his office, Miller leaned in slightly. "Look, sir, I'm really sorry about this," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the lobby's hum. I'm following orders." Marcus gave a brief, almost imperceptible nod of understanding. He recognized the difficult position of frontline employees caught in the gears of mismanagement or bias from above. As they reached the threshold of the revolving doors, Marcus paused and reached into the inner pocket of his windbreaker, retrieving his personal cell phone. Not the standard corporate-issued one, but his private device. Officer Miller, before I step outside, I need to make one very brief phone call. Marcus said calmly but with newfound firmness. It will take less than 60 seconds. Miller hesitated, glancing nervously back towards the interior of the bank where Vance stood, arms crossed, clearly expecting Marcus to be deposited onto the sidewalk without further delay. Sir, my instructions were to escort you completely off the premises. Miller began uncertainly. 1 minute, Marcus repeated, his tone shifting subtly. The hesitant demeanor of Michael Andrews began to recede, replaced by a flickered quiet, unshakable authority that commanded boardrooms and influenced markets. That's all I require. Your cooperation will be noted. Something in Marcus's sudden shift in presence, the confidence, the directness, the implication of consequence, gave Officer Miller pause. Perhaps it was the sheer incongruity of this man, accused of being a disruptive lowlife, now issuing a calm, almost regal request. Perhaps it was Miller's own lingering discomfort with the entire situation. Whatever the reason, the young guard nodded curtly. Okay, sir. 1 minute. Make it quick. Marcus immediately dialed a number he knew by heart, bypassing his contacts list. It was a direct private line, bypassing switchboards and assistants, ringing on a specific phone on the executive floor of Apex Financial Headquarters, located 20 floors directly above the branch they were standing in. Miles away in spirit, but physically just an elevator ride up, Evelyn Reed, Executive Vice President of Operations and Marcus's most trusted confidant and lieutenant for nearly 2 decades, was deep in reviewing risk assessment protocols when the private line on her desk emitted its distinctive chime. Only a handful of people possessed this number. Marcus, his family, the chairman of the board. She snatched it up before the second ring. Evelyn Reed, she answered, her voice crisp and efficient. Evelyn, it's Marcus, came the reply, tight and controlled. I'm downstairs. Main branch lobby. I need you down here. Now. No explanation. No preamble. None was needed. In 15 years of working side by side through crises, market booms, and busts, Marcus had never issued such a stark, immediate summons without critical cause. On my way, Evelyn replied without a flicker of hesitation, already rising from her chair, grabbing her executive access badge from the desk. Marcus ended the call just as Richard Vance, his patience clearly exhausted, began striding purposefully across the lobby toward them, his face a mask of indignation. Miller, I thought I gave you clear instructions. Vance snapped as he approached, his voice sharp with irritation. Remove this man from the property immediately. What's the delay? Before Officer Miller could respond, Marcus turned slightly away from the door. With a deliberate motion, he reached up to his jawline. The carefully applied salt and pepper goatee peeled away cleanly in his hand, revealing the strong, familiar jawline featured prominently in Apex's annual reports and countless news articles. Next, he removed the thick, unfashionable glasses, tucking them into his jacket pocket. Almost unconsciously, his posture straightened. The hesitant, slightly rounded shoulders of Michael Andrews vanished, replaced by the commanding, upright bearing of Marcus Jones, CEO. Vance stopped short, his angry momentum arrested by confusion. He blinked, watching this bizarre transformation begin. What on earth was this guy doing? Around the lobby, the hushed conversations and routine transactions faltered. More employees and customers began to notice the strange tableau unfolding near the entrance. A ripple of confused murmurs started to spread. What in God's name do you think you're doing? Vance demanded, though his voice had lost its sharp edge, now tinged with bewilderment. Marcus ignored him. He reached into the inner pocket of his windbreaker again, this time withdrawing not a phone, but his actual Apex Financial Executive Identification badge. It wasn't a standard employee ID. This one had a distinctive gold border and holographic overlay signifying Level 1 clearance, granting unrestricted access to every Apex facility worldwide, from the London trading floor to the vaults beneath this very building. He held it loosely in his hand, palm up, but didn't display it openly just yet. The anticipation hung heavy in the air. At that exact moment, the main entrance doors burst inward with force. Evelyn Reed swept into the lobby like a controlled storm, dressed in a sharply tailored power suit. her expression a mixture of intense focus and barely concealed urgency. She moved with a purposeful velocity that earned her the affectionate nickname Hurricane Reed among Apex staff. Her sharp eyes scanned the lobby, instantly locating Marcus standing near the door, the partially removed disguise elements telling a story she was beginning to piece together with dawning horror. "Stop everything. Right now," Evelyn commanded, her voice ringing with authority that cut through the growing murmur, instantly silencing the entire cavernous space. Every head snapped towards her. Every teller froze mid-count. Even Richard Vance took an involuntary step backward, momentarily stunned by the unexpected arrival and commanding presence of the executive vice president. Evelyn's piercing gaze swept the lobby, taking in the scene, Marcus, Officer Miller, the bewildered Vance, the watching employees, the stunned customers. Her eyes finally landed on Richard Vance, narrowing with laser-like intensity. "Mr. Richard Vance, I presume?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet now, yet carrying across the suddenly tomb-like silence. Vance, recognizing the EVP instantly but utterly baffled by the context, could only manage a jerky, mute nod. How did she know his name? Why was she here? Why was she looking at him like that? Evelyn turned slightly, addressing the entire assembled crowd of staff and onlookers, her voice projecting clearly, each word sharp and distinct. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your undivided attention, please? I need to make something unequivocally clear to every single person in this branch, right now." She paused with dramatic effect, letting the weight of the silence build. Then she gestured directly, unmistakably, toward the man standing beside Officer Miller, the man who just moments ago was being ejected as Michael Andrews. "This man," Evelyn declared, her voice resonating with controlled fury and absolute certainty, "is Marcus Jones, founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Apex Financial Group." The words detonated in the silent lobby like a shockwave. Audible gasps echoed from multiple directions. A customer near the teller line dropped a styrofoam coffee cup, the dark liquid spreading unnoticed across the gleaming marble floor. Tellers clutched their chests. Loan officers stared, mouths agape. The young black couple, the Williams family, exchanged looks of stunned disbelief, then dawning comprehension. Richard Vance's face underwent a terrifyingly rapid transformation. The color drained completely, leaving it a sickly, doughy white. His jaw worked silently, opening and closing like a landed fish gasping for air. Beside him, Brenda Foster, who had emerged from her office area drawn by the commotion, swayed on her feet, grabbing onto the edge of a nearby reception counter for support, her knees visibly buckling. "Takes that's not possible." Vance finally choked out, his voice a strangled whisper. "Mr. Jones!" "Mr. Jones," Evelyn cut him off icily, "is standing right here. The man you just verbally abused. The man you referred to as a lowlife and a fraud. The man whose legitimate request to speak to a manager you denied. The man you ordered security to physically remove from his own bank." Marcus stepped forward then, the transformation complete. Gone was Michael Andrews. Before them stood Marcus Jones, the visionary leader, his presence filling the space, his expression a mixture of profound disappointment and cold resolve. He subtly tapped the lapel of his now open windbreaker, revealing a tiny, almost invisible lens pinned discreetly beneath the collar. "This entire interaction," Marcus stated, his voice calm but carrying the unmistakable weight of command, "from the moment I approached the reception desk to Mr. Vance's colorful assessment of my character, has been recorded, audio and video, along with the bank's own comprehensive security footage, which I trust is operational." He directed the last question pointedly towards the head of branch security, who looked as if he might faint. "We now possess a complete, irrefutable record of precisely what transpired here today." The silence in the branch deepened, becoming heavy, suffocating. Customers stood frozen, realizing they were witnessing a corporate drama of staggering proportions. Employees exchanged horrified glances, the full, disastrous implications crashing down upon them. Richard Vance's face had now shifted from white to a greenish gray. Recognition, finally, belatedly, dawned in his panicked eyes as he truly saw the man beneath the minimal disguise elements he'd initially dismissed. Mr. Jones? Sir, there's been a misunderstanding, a terrible misunderstanding, Vance stammered, his voice trembling, desperately trying to salvage the unsalvageable. If I had only known, if I'd realized it was you. That, Mr. Vance, Marcus interrupted, his voice cutting like sharpened steel, is precisely the point. You shouldn't need to know who I am. You shouldn't need to see an expensive suit or recognize a face from a magazine cover to treat every single person who walks through those doors with basic dignity, professional courtesy, and absolute fairness. The fact that your behavior would have been different had you known my identity doesn't excuse your actions. It condemns them. It confirms everything I needed to know. Evelyn Reed stepped forward again, her expression grim, holding a slim tablet displaying incoming data. Mr. Jones hasn't been acting on a whim, she announced, her voice ringing with authority, ensuring everyone heard. Apex headquarters has received 17 formal, documented complaints specifically citing discriminatory lending practices, biased treatment based on race, and inappropriate steering of qualified minority applicants toward high-interest loan products originating from this specific branch in just the past 12 months. Allegations involving both Mr. Vance and Ms. Foster by name. Today, Mr. Jones decided he needed to witness the reality behind those complaints firsthand. Marcus began to walk slowly toward the center of the lobby, his executive ID badge now held clearly visible in his hand. He made deliberate eye contact with several employees, tellers, customer service reps, junior loan officers, before addressing the entire room, his voice resonating with controlled emotion, a deep well of sorrow underpinning the anger. I founded Apex Financial Group 20 years ago, he said, his voice quieter now but no less powerful, because my own parents were repeatedly denied the opportunity to build a better life, denied basic fairness by banks just like this one, solely because of the color of their skin. I swore that would never happen here. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Today, I learned that promise has been broken. The very same insidious discrimination I built this institution to eradicate has taken root within its walls, poisoning our mission, betraying our values, making a mockery of our name. He stopped, turning to face Richard Vance and Brenda Foster directly, his expression hardening into one of absolute resolve. Discrimination, whether conscious or unconscious, subtle or overt, has no place in banking. It has no place in our society. And it sure as hell has absolutely no place within Apex Financial Group. Not on my watch. Evelyn Reed stepped forward, pointing a decisive finger first at Vance, then at Foster. You have exactly 7 minutes to gather your personal belongings from your desks, she stated coldly, leaving no room for argument. Security will escort you. Surrender your badges, your keys, and any company property. Your network access has already been revoked. Officer Miller, who moments before had been tasked with ejecting Marcus, now stood rigidly at attention, awaiting instructions from his actual ultimate boss. Officer Miller, Marcus addressed him directly, his tone firm but fair. Please ensure that Mr. Vance and Ms. Foster are escorted from the premises once they have collected their immediate personal effects. As of this moment, they are no longer employees of Apex Financial Group. The young guard nodded sharply, his expression a complex mixture of shock, relief, and newfound, unambiguous purpose. As Richard Vance and Brenda Foster stood frozen, paralyzed by the sudden, catastrophic implosion of their careers, Marcus Jones turned his attention away from them. His gaze softened slightly as he looked toward the waiting area, toward the young black couple, the Williams family, who had been patient witnesses to this entire sordid affair. With the quiet dignity and commanding presence that had defined his leadership for 2 decades, Marcus Jones, CEO, walked directly towards them. Mr. and Mrs. Williams, I believe, he said, extending his hand. My sincere apology for your extended wait and for what you've had to witness today. I understand you came here to discuss a business loan application. If you still have a few moments, I would be personally honored to review it with you right now. History wasn't just being witnessed in that lobby. It was being actively reshaped, not only for the careers of Richard Vance and Brenda Foster, ending abruptly in disgrace, but for the Williams family, suddenly face to face with the CEO. For every employee grappling with the implications of the day's events. For Apex Financial Group, facing a moment of profound crisis and potential transformation, and perhaps in some small way for the wider banking industry that would soon feel the tremors emanating from this extraordinary confrontation. The 7-minute countdown for Vance and Foster's departure had begun, but the clock had just started ticking on a fundamental overhaul of Apex Financial's culture, policies, and soul. The main conference room on the second floor of the Apex Financial flagship branch, usually reserved for high-level client meetings or regional strategy sessions, was packed beyond capacity. Employees stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls, spilling out into the hallway, the air thick with a mixture of shock anxiety and stunned silence. Less than an hour had passed since the dramatic unveiling in the lobby downstairs, a scene that had already become the stuff of instant corporate legend. Now, every single employee from branch, tellers, customer service associates, loan officers, those remaining, administrative staff, security personnel, even the custodial team pulled from their duties, was assembled to hear directly from a man at the center of the storm. Marcus Jones stood at the head of the long, polished conference table. The remnants of his disguise, the windbreaker, the ill-fitting khakis, were gone, replaced by the crisp shirt and trousers he always kept in his office suite upstairs for emergencies. His usual aura of command was back, yet tempered by a visible weight of disappointment and gravity. Behind him, a large projection screen displayed the familiar Apex Financial Group logo, but alongside it, starkly illuminated, was the company's founding mission statement, building wealth and opportunity for all communities. Evelyn Reed stood beside him, a laptop open on the table, her expression composed but unmistakably serious. "Thank you all for gathering so quickly," Marcus began, his voice calm but carrying a resonance that demanded attention. He scanned the faces in the room, meeting eyes, acknowledging the collective tension. What occurred in our lobby earlier today was not just an isolated incident of poor judgment. It represents a profound, systemic failure, a failure of our culture, a failure of our training, a failure of our oversight, and ultimately, a failure to live up to the core values upon which this entire institution was built. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Before we discuss the path forward, it is absolutely essential that everyone in this room understand the unvarnished reality of what transpired. Not rumors, not filtered accounts, but the direct evidence. He nodded to Evelyn. With a few keystrokes, the screen behind him flickered, replacing the logo and mission statement with video footage. It wasn't the bank's standard wide-angle security feed, but the intimate, damning perspective from the hidden camera Marcus had worn. This footage, Marcus continued, his voice hardening slightly, will be uncomfortable to watch. It should be uncomfortable, because we cannot begin to fix a problem we refuse to acknowledge in its entirety. For the next agonizing 10 minutes, the room watched in near total silence, broken only by occasional stifled gasps or uneasy shifting. They saw Michael Andrews approach the reception desk, saw Sarah's dismissive interaction. They saw the long, documented wait, while other customers were prioritized. They witnessed Richard Vance's condescending welcome, the immediate skepticism, the cursory dismissal of the meticulously prepared portfolio. They heard the attempt to steer Marcus towards the higher interest community pathways loan, the thinly veiled prejudicial remarks about people from certain backgrounds and financial responsibility. They saw Vance's dismissive body language contrast sharply with split-screen footage showing his effusive engagement with Mr. Harrison just moments before. And finally, captured with chilling clarity, they heard the muttered slur. This lowlife, probably a fraud anyway. The raw, unfiltered bias was laid bare, undeniable. Several employees lowered their heads, unable to watch, shame coloring their faces. Others looked genuinely shocked, perhaps naively unaware that such blatant differential treatment was occurring daily under their noses. A few exchanged nervous glances, perhaps recognizing echoes of similar interactions they witnessed or even participated in. When the video ended, the screen went black, plunging the room into an even deeper, more profound silence. Marcus let the quiet linger, allowing the full impact to sink in before he spoke again, his voice filled with a sorrowful resolve. This, I fear, is not simply the result of two rogue employees. he stated firmly, shattering any illusion that firing Vance and Foster was the end of the matter. This is symptomatic of a deeper issue. As Evelyn mentioned downstairs, we received 17 formal complaints citing discriminatory practices at this branch in the last year alone. 17. How many more incidents went unreported? How many potential customers simply walked away, discouraged and disillusioned? This morning, before coming down here, I personally reviewed the summary data for every single business loan application denied by this branch over the past 6 months. The patterns, when viewed through the lens of what I experience today, are undeniable, indefensible, and frankly, sickening. Evelyn Reed stepped forward, her expression resolute. As you all witnessed, Richard Vance and Brenda Foster's employment with Apex Financial Group has been terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct and violation of federal lending laws and company policy, she announced formally. Furthermore, James Harrington, the branch security supervisor who implemented and failed to oversee protocols that allowed management to remove customers for simply requesting escalation, a clear violation of our stated customer bill of rights, has also been terminated, effective immediately. Murmurs rippled through the crowded room. 3 terminations, including senior staff. The message was clear. Accountability would be swift and decisive. Evelyn raised a hand, silencing the nascent chatter. Let me be absolutely crystal clear, she continued, her gaze sweeping the room. These actions are not the end of our response to this crisis. They are merely the necessary first step. This is the beginning of a comprehensive overhaul. Marcus moved out from behind the table, walking slowly among the assembled employees, forcing them to meet his gaze. He stopped briefly beside a young Latina teller near the back, whose eyes were glistening with unshed tears, clearly affected by the video and the subsequent announcements. I poured my heart, my soul, and every dollar I could scrape together into building Apex Financial, Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion but steady. I built it to be different, to be a force for good, an engine of opportunity for communities that have been locked out for far too long. Today, I came face to face with the harsh reality that, in some crucial ways, we have failed. Profoundly. The very discrimination my own family endured decades ago isn't just history. It's happening right here, right now, under the Apex banner. He returned to the head of the table, his expression shifting from one of deep disappointment to one of unwavering determination. That ends today. Starting immediately, we are implementing sweeping changes across all Apex branches, beginning right here, right now, in this flagship location. Evelyn advanced the presentation on the screen behind him, displaying the first set of action items. Effective tomorrow morning, Marcus declared, every single employee in this branch, from management down to part-time tellers, will begin intensive mandatory fair lending and unconscious bias training. And I'm not talking about the usual click-through compliance modules. We are bringing and leading external facilitators for immersive, scenario-based workshops designed to identify and dismantle bias in real-time interactions. Evelyn clicked to the next slide. Furthermore, Marcus continued, we are immediately launching a nationwide mystery shopper program. Individuals representing diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, all possessing identical, strong financial qualifications, will be applied for loans and other services at Apex branches across the country, including this one, on an ongoing basis. Their experiences will be meticulously documented. The results, both positive and negative, will be shared transparently within the company and reviewed quarterly by a newly established lending equity and oversight committee, which will report directly to me and the board of directors. He paused, ensuring the weight of that initiative landed. There will be nowhere to hide. Additionally, he announced, his voice ringing with conviction, before I leave this building today, I will personally begin reviewing every single loan application, business and personal, that has been denied by this branch in the past 3 months. Any application that meets Apex's objective, unbiased qualification standards will be immediately overturned and approved. I or Evelyn will be making personal calls to those applicants to offer profound apologies and rectify the situation. He looked directly at the Williams family, who had been quietly invited into the back of the room, including yours, Mr. and Mrs. Williams. We will start with you right after this meeting. Evelyn advanced to the final slide. It displayed a quote from the original Apex Financial Founding Charter, words Marcus had penned himself 20 years prior. Banking must be an instrument of inclusion, an equalizer of opportunity, not a barrier reinforcing privilege. Capital must flow based on merit, potential, and character, not on pedigree or prejudice. These are not just pretty words on a dusty document, Marcus said, gesturing emphatically toward the screen, his voice charged with renewed purpose. This is our solemn promise. This is our reason for being. For too long, perhaps, we allowed complacency to set in. We trusted the systems without verifying the outcomes. Today was a brutal, painful, but necessary wake-up call. Starting right now, we will recommit ourselves with every fiber of our being to living up to that promise. We will work tirelessly to rebuild trust. Trust with our customers, trust with our communities, and trust among ourselves. We will become the bank I always intended Apex to be. We will get this right, or we will fail trying. He surveyed the room one last time, his gaze intense, searching for understanding, for commitment in the eyes of his employees. The meeting concluded not with applause, but with a heavy, reflective silence, followed by the quiet distribution of new policy guidelines and training schedules. As the staff began to file out, many looking visibly shaken, contemplative, or determined, Marcus and Evelyn remained, preparing to field questions, address concerns, and begin the long, arduous process of rebuilding. Later that evening, as the city lights began to paint streaks across the twilight sky, Marcus Jones's car, a standard sedan driven by a trusted security detail member, not his usual executive vehicle, pulled up quietly outside the small convenience store in the heart of Oak Creek. It was a place where this entire painful, illuminating journey had begun less than 36 hours earlier. By a stroke of what felt like fate, or perhaps just the predictable patterns of neighborhood life where local gathering spots are few, the same two men whose frustrated conversation about Apex Financial had pierced Marcus's anonymity were sitting at one of the small tables near the window, nursing coffees, still deep in discussion. Taking a deep breath, Marcus got out of the car alone and walked inside. He approached their table directly, no disguise now, just himself, extending a hand in greeting. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said respectfully. "My name is Marcus Jones. I'm the CEO of Apex Financial Group." The men looked up, startled, recognition dawning slowly on their faces, mixed with understandable suspicion. "I couldn't help but overhear part of your conversation in this store yesterday afternoon," Marcus continued sincerely. "You were discussing difficulties you'd encountered trying to secure business financing, specifically with my bank. I want you to know I heard you, and I was deeply disturbed by what I heard." Their initial shock and wariness gradually softened as Marcus, omitting specific names and the more dramatic details of his undercover operation, explained that their conversation had prompted him to investigate potential issues, which had unfortunately confirmed serious problems with biased treatment at the downtown branch. Problems he was now taking drastic steps to rectify. He spoke not just as a CEO, but as someone whose own family history mirrored their frustrations. "I can't undo the negative experiences you've already had," Marcus said earnestly, "but I would be grateful for the opportunity to personally review your loan applications myself. If Apex failed you, I need to understand how, and I want to make it right if humanly possible." By the time Marcus left the convenience store an hour later, after listening intently to their stories and sharing his commitment to reform, both men had his direct contact information, an appointment scheduled at Apex headquarters the following morning. For Marcus Jones, the journey that started with a chance overhearing of painful truths had ignited a crusade, not just to fix a broken branch, but to fundamentally recommit his entire organization to its founding principles, ensuring that the promise of banking for all was not just a slogan, but a lived reality. The disguise was packed away, but the clarity it provided, the stark view from the other side, would forever shape his leadership, informing every policy, every training session, every hiring decision, and every loan evaluation moving forward. Apex Financial Group had been shaken to its core, but perhaps, just perhaps, it could emerge stronger, truer, and finally worthy of the name Marcus Jones had intended it to bear. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story today. We hope it provided some food for thought, and perhaps resonated with your own experiences. We wish you all health, fairness, and respectful interactions in all your endeavors. If this story moved you or made you think, please hit that subscribe button right now. Share it with others who might benefit from its message. Your support helps us continue bringing you compelling stories about justice, consequences, and the human condition. Click subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.